The things that's so notable about the films that Powell and Pressburger made during the war and after under the rank organization is that they are so unique, unusual, and you never know what's going to happen in them. And every time anyone went to see one of those movies, they had no idea what was going to happen, which annoyed the critics, I think, a great deal because it made their job of reviewing them a little harder. This period of filmmaking, Martin Scorsese particularly envies. He said it's the greatest period of anarchy within a major studio that has ever existed. And it was because the war was on, the films were relatively successful, so they were left alone by the rank organization until The Red Shoes was made. And then the rank organization hated The Red Shoes, which of course is one of the most beloved films ever made, and tried to change the relationship. And the Archers were told, now we are going to interfere heavily with what you do. You will not choose your subjects anymore. Unfortunately, that great period of filmmaking then came to an end, and the Archers went to Alexander Korda, who had been begging them to come and work with him. However, Korda had bought many novels that he wanted made into films, and he started shoving those onto the Archers. And they did make some of them. But the first one that really got them in trouble was Elusive Pimpernel, which was made as a co-production with Samuel Goldwyn in Hollywood. Goldwyn didn't like the film, took it away from the Archers and recut it. And Michael Powell always said to me, whatever happened to my lost film, my beautiful film? And so this was a very painful experience. The next film they made, Gone to Earth, was a co-production with David O. Selznick, who was a famous American producer, known for interfering with everybody. And he sent, notes every day to Michael Powell when he saw the dailies, which Michael Powell never read and had his assistant put into a drawer. But when finally Selznick saw the film, which starred his wife at the time, Jennifer Jones, he didn't like it, and he decided he was going to make his own version. However, the Archers, having learned from the experience with Goldwyn, had put into their contract that they could have their own version. And so their version, Gone to Earth, is the correct one. And Selznick then made another one called The Wild Heart. So this was a very disappointing series of experiences for them, particularly after the wonderful period of no interference. So maybe they decided to make The Tales of Hoffmann because they would have more control over it. It not being from a novel that Korda had bought. It was suggested actually by Sir Thomas Beecham, who had been so critical in recording the score for The Red Shoes. And so it was his idea. And the fact that they could try and take an opera, which is sort of stuck on a stage, and just go crazy and transform it into a real film is what intrigued them all. And they just had a wonderful time making it. It was interesting that when we were making Hugo here in England, that we actually were working on the same lot as this film was made. And Marty was very excited. We couldn't find the exact place, but it turned out that according to what I've read, that they made the film in a big, huge silent film studio, which was not equipped for sound, which actually was fine because they were performing to playback of the beautiful recording that Sir Thomas Beecham had done with all of the singers who were voicing the actors who were not opera singers. And so it meant that they didn't have to worry about sound, which for filmmakers was really a wonderful thing. They didn't have to worry, is the boom in the shot, is the microphone close enough to get good sound? They could forget about all of that, and it freed them up incredibly. One of the things that shooting almost a silent film enabled them to do was to use techniques that Michael Powell had learned very well in the silent era, which is, he always said, every shot should have its own speed. But you can't do that when you're shooting 24 frames per second with sound, but with silent film you can. So he says that he often changed the speed of the camera 4 or 5 times within a shot. And you'll sometimes see some very dramatic examples of that. For example, there's a shot where Sir Frederick Ashton backs up at high speed. But there are a lot of things that you're not even aware of that they're doing with magical sort of effects that they're doing in the camera because they don't have to worry about sound. It was wonderful. And Michael just always kept saying, I felt so free, I felt so free. Hein Heckroth rose to unbelievable heights in this movie. I noticed that his credit is designed by Hein Heckroth. That's how strongly the Archers felt about what he contributed to this movie. I don't know where his ideas came from. It was as if he was on LSD or something. I mean, the ideas he has for costumes and sets are just amazing. And the wonderful way that they actually want you to realize the lack of reality in the sets. For example, in the Venice sequence, you see Ludmila Cherina on a gondola, and it's quite obvious that she's not on water. She's being pulled on a track through a beautiful set, and that contributes to the film in a way. And they just had one hell of a good time making it.
Oh, sir, the guests wait to be presented.
One of the great elements of the Tales of Hoffmann is the way the chorus is treated, which would have been on the stage in an opera. And Korda kept saying to the filmmakers, what are you going to do about the chorus? What are you going to do about the chorus? And finally, they decided to use puppets as the chorus, which is absolutely beautiful in the film because first of all, you see Sir Frederick Ashton, who was a great choreographer at the time, as the puppet master. And then you see puppets, and then they are transformed into human beings, but they're not really human beings. They're sort of robotic with incredible makeup. The women's eyes are like flowers with daisy petals around them. Some of the hair looks like curled celluloid to me. I think it may actually have been film. And they move like puppets. And then there's a transition sometimes back to puppets and back to the puppet master above. And he himself becomes a puppet at one point. It's a brilliant idea. This gives you a feeling of how they just where they felt free to do anything with this opera, not to be bound by what it looked like when people went to the Metropolitan Opera, or that they could make it genuinely into a film. When Sir Thomas Beecham actually sat at a piano and played the score for the entire Archers organization, Hein Heckroth had the idea that each of the acts should have a different color, and they do. Of course, the first sequence you see, which is the Dragonfly Ballet, was added in. That is not in the opera, but it was done to make sure that Moira Shearer would be in the film, which was very important to Korda because he was envious of the success of the Red Shoes. But after the Dragonfly Ballet, which I love because it is the idea that what is painted on the floor, which are lily pads and water, looks so realistic. And then when Moira Shearer dances across it, and later on in the film where you see a pair of stairs unrolled because they couldn't afford to build the stairs, and so Michael Powell said, well, let's just paint them on the floor. We're painting everything else. We might as well paint this. And you see Sir Frederick Ashton unroll the stairs, and the dancers dance down what looks like stairs. They could never have danced down a pair of stairs, actually, a set of stairs. So it was really a good idea. It's ideas like that that are so stunning. The color idea was that the first act, where you see Moira Shearer as a marionette, really, a wind-up doll, is yellow. The second sequence, which is Venice, which is very passionate, is red, Scorsese's favorite color, of course. And the third act is blue because it takes place on an island in the Aegean, and the fact that the sea is there, painted, of course, is very important to the film. The isolation of them on the island because the heroine is dying of tuberculosis. And even there, you see one of the most wonderful shots is Hoffman and his muse, played by Pamela Brown, approaching the island. And you see that the boat isn't moving at all. Everything is painted, the sea around them. The boat isn't moving at all. They just have a little wind in the sail. And his, not a sail, I'm sorry, I think it's just his scarf is blowing in the wind. And that gives you the feeling that they're moving, but they're not. But the filmmakers are acknowledging that. They are telling you that. They are allowing you to see the artifice, which is part of what they're enjoying. And then, of course, an incredible sequence where Anne Ayers jumps off a cliff, which is very much like a modern video. The superimpositions and the use of visual effects there is amazing. One of the things Scorsese loves about the film is again, the artifice, the obvious artifice, where, for example, Robert Helpman will take wax from a candle and squeeze it in his hand and open it, and there will be a jewel, an emerald in his hand. Scorsese just loves this sequence. He loves the daring of it. And you can sort of see that they're not using special effects the way we would today to make it very smooth. You can see jump cuts, and you can see how they're tricking you to a certain extent. They do use flash frames in order to get themselves out of a little trouble, as far as I'm concerned. Scorsese loves the flash frames because he thinks it's part of the filmmaking device, but I can see that, for example, when Robert Helpman walks out of a mirror, they had to use a little flash of white light in order to cover the two ways they were shooting him. They were shooting him one way first and then another way after, so that it would appear as if he's walking out of the mirror. But to use that device is very modern. To just use flash frames, which is something that Stan Brakhage and wonderful independent filmmakers used extensively later on, is very, very modern. Fortunately, Scorsese, through his film foundation, was able to raise the large amount of money that's needed when you restore 3-strip Technicolor films, because there are 3 strips of film you're restoring, not just one. And it takes an enormous amount of work to do these restorations. The reason that it was needed, the original negative actually, fortunately, was in very good shape. Some of the other Powell Pressburger movies were not in good shape. They had mold growing on them, or they were badly scratched. But Hoffman, for some reason, was in very good shape. However, the previous restorations had been made from interpositives and not from the actual camera negative. I mean, it's amazing to think that we were working from what was in the camera at the time that they were making the movie. And so it needed to go back to the beautiful original color. And also there had been some misregistration in some of the areas of the film in the prints that were made in the 80s. So what happens now with digital restoration is you can take those 3 strips, and the computer can figure out any shrinkage that has occurred in the 3 strips and actually align them, so you get perfect alignment. In fact, it looks almost sometimes like it was just made yesterday. Then the hard part is that you have to then recreate the color, because when people are working from an interpositive, which is an intermediate stage, the color timing is locked into that interpositive. But when you go back to the original camera negative, you have to retime the film from the beginning, using very good prints to judge by, so that you know how to make it look right. Also, Scorsese and I had screened the movie many times, and also I had screened it with Michael Powell, so I had some very strong idea of how it should look. But we were able to bring incredible color back to the film, not only the registration, but color and incredible detail, so that Scorsese, when he saw the final restoration, couldn't believe all the things he was seeing. And his 13-year-old daughter came up to him afterwards, and she said, "Did you see that Robert Helpman, who plays the villain in all of the acts, is wearing a scorpion pin at his neck?" And that's the kind of thing that the restoration has brought forward now. And when I was restoring, helping supervise the restoration, which was done by Motion Picture Imaging at Warner Brothers in LA, with the two people who had done the restorations of The Red Shoes and Life and Death of Colonel Blimp, which is Ned Price and then Ray Grabowski, we were going back and forth over the film, constantly trying to get it right. And so I came to know the film almost as if I had edited it. And again, I saw these amazing little details, like you would see a butterfly on somebody's coat. I mean, a real butterfly. Or you would see that on the back of Robert Helpman's coat in the first act, there are eyes all over the back of his jacket because he supplies the eyes for the marionette doll. And there were just things that just never ended. I mean, I could not believe what Hein Heckroth came up. How did he do it? How did he find time to come up with all these ideas? One of the things we found when we were doing the restoration, the British Film Institute found some missing sections that had been taken out of the movie. One of them is the 6 crucial minutes in the third act. But one of the most amazing things was an epilogue that nobody has ever seen. And when we got to we were restoring the movie, and we got to the end of the movie, and all of a sudden up came this strange epilogue, and I said to the restorers, "What is that?" And they said, "Oh, well, we're not putting that on because it doesn't have a soundtrack." I said, "Oh, yes, we are," because there was a wonderful idea they had for which we couldn't find the soundtrack, so I had to create a soundtrack for it. It's so interesting. Somebody must have talked them out of doing it, because the film is long, and of course Corda being so upset about the length and wanting to drop the entire third act would certainly not have been up for doing this, but somehow they did manage to get it into the 3-strip. So when it came up, it was like this, it's like you're discovering King Tut's tomb or something. You just suddenly find this wonderful, amusing, so wittily done. And I tried to vary the applause, and I tried to use the music that was always heard with that particular actor. And I even used the porcelain hands of the puppets clapping for when you see Frederick Ashton as a puppet. He comes on as a puppet too in this. It's a wonderful idea, very, very typical of the Archers, their wonderful sense of humor and wit. Towards the end of their lives, Michael Powell and Emeric Pressburger sort of thought back about Hoffman, which I guess was perhaps not that successful commercially. But Emeric felt that it sometimes takes 30 years for a film to find its audience, and hopefully now it has found its audience. And Michael Powell, when I was with him in the Festival of the Midnight Sun in Finland, at one point said that he thought maybe it was the best, or certainly the most original film that he had ever made.